Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Textiles and Tea. Thank you for joining us today. I am Kathy Group. I'm the Advertising and Marketing Manager for Handweavers Guild of America, and I will be your host today. So we have had Textiles and Tea today with Mary Zicafoose. Welcome, Mary. Mary has gotten her BFA from the St. Mary's College in Notre Dame, Indiana. She also has a graduate degree from the Art Institute of Chicago and then the University of Nebraska. Mary has studied a variety of media, and she'll probably talk some about that today. And she considers herself a self-taught fiber artist. And that's why she's here today, is that we're talking with this wonderful fiber artist. She is the co-director emerita of the American Tapestry Alliance, and she currently has a studio in Nebraska, Omaha, Nebraska. Welcome, Mary, to Textiles and Tea. My most important question starts off with, what is your favorite tea?
You know, this is the hardest question of the day, actually, to choose a favorite tea. It goes like all things, you go in jags where you love something and then you don't drink it again for 5 years. So right now I'm into this tea called Ambessa. And it's by Harney and Sons, and they have two flavors that I love. One is called the Earl of Harlem, that you drink in the afternoon because it gives you that fabulous jolt. And the other is called Safari Breakfast Tea, and you drink that in the morning because it gives you a different kind of a jolt. But these are these black, very complex black teas that are sort of luxurious and sinful, I would say.
Sinful. I like that already. Now, I understand that, if I have this right, you're in your new digs, right? You've just moved.
I'm broadcasting live from Cedar Bluffs, Nebraska, and we literally moved. We moved 2 weeks before Christmas. We left our home of 25 years in Omaha, and I'm currently in a weekend cabin, waiting for a new house and studio to be completed. And God knows when that's going to happen. Because of COVID, we dug a hole in the ground last January 24th, prior to COVID, and they said we'd be in on February 24th of this year. And I'm looking out on the prairie right now, and I hope I'm in by next February 24th. But I'm surrounded by boxes, and it's been a pretty chaotic Christmas, but it's the first Christmas I haven't wrapped a package, baked a cookie, or hung a decoration.
Wow.
We were just in this other world, and not the greatest of worlds, but yeah.
Well, we appreciate you taking time today. I know your life is very chaotic right now in the midst of all this. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got into fiber arts? Your story is fascinating. Could you talk some about that?
I could probably tell stories all afternoon about, and as we all can, I guess that's one of the things about, adding on years. But I think you get these little nudges along the way. As I look back in my life, my daughter always says, "How did you end up a weaver, Mom? Come on, all the things you could have been." And it was, pretty much the hand of destiny. And I think I want to just tell you a couple little experiences that I think really gently nudged me to where I am today. And at the time, I never would have guessed. And one was the Christmas play. In first grade, my mother was supposed to make me a little angel outfit. She got the pattern. We were supposed to go to Penny's and get the satin fabric and the little glitzy garland to go around the neck. And I don't think we had any money. And my mom found a piece of seersucker, and she made this angel gown out of blue seersucker. And when the night I showed up for the Christmas play, everybody was in satin, and their gowns had this fabulous hand and drape, and they were rustling about. And I had this little dish rag on of seersucker. And to this day, I remember standing on stage knowing that I couldn't sing loud enough or hold my head high enough for this piece of fabric to become glorious. And it was kind of my first experience of the power of cloth.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, if I just had one of those on, I would be feeling really great. So, file that away, the power of cloth. in first grade. All of a sudden I'm in high school. I'm working at this old Victorian bookstore and in Niles, Michigan. And the owner of the store, Maxine Showers, belonged to the Niles Weavers Guild. And this was my first exposure to HGA and to Weavers Guilds, and the throng of women that would troop into this bookshop with their projects and their looms in tote, and the buzz and the excitement. And I was stunned because my mother lived in another world and she didn't have a throng of women really turned on and excited about making things and sharing information. And it was a different take on how you could approach life and a different take on creativity that I had never been exposed to. And one day Maxine sent me home on my bicycle with a little Dorothy loom. We strapped it to the basket on my bike.
That.
And
That's great.
I was riding my bike down the street with my first loom. And I got home, I put it in my bedroom and had no idea what to do with it. And I always say there's nothing more, there's a sense of revulsion that comes from an unwarped loom when you don't know what to do with it. I was like, I had no idea what to do with it. But again, I filed it away thinking there's something about weaving in my future. And then when I was in college, I was doing a portfolio review, hoping that I was going to be the next great painter, next great contemporary painter. And the head of the art department looked at me and she said, honey, these are textiles. These are all, you're a textile designer. This is cloth. This is images that should go on cloth. And I was stunned / insulted, went back to my dorm room, threw myself across the bed going, kill me now. What is she talking about? And we didn't have a weaving program. I had no sense of direction. I didn't know what to do with that information. But again, all of these little things were gentle nudges to move me, like someone is whispering, weaving, Mary, wake up. And it took some years. My undergrad degree was in photography. My grad degree was actually in clay. And in the midst of grad school, I transferred from the Art Institute of Chicago to the University of Nebraska. I took a weaving class because I loved the look of the equipment. That was it. I would go into the weaving, they had a little weaving room and I would look at that stuff and go, whatever it is, I love it. And I've got to figure out how to work this stuff. And I sat down behind my first loom and that was it. As soon as I threw a shuttle, I guess I sort of saw the rest of my life. I saw the potential of what this loom could do if you combined it with what I wanted to do, with what I wanted to make. And I had no skill sets, of course, zero. So it took years. Like we all start out, it took years and years of weaving for me to create work that I envisioned, that I dreamed of making. And I just had to learn how to do it. Yep.
Let me ask you this. I don't want to take you off your track, but I'm curious to find, I'm sorry, my phone keeps ringing. I'm curious to know, how did all those others modalities play into you being a fiber artist? Okay. How did the photography and everything else impact on you?
I think all of my background convinced me that I was an artist. I mean, I was articulately educated in the arts. So and that was a great sense of inspiration to me. And so it didn't teach me technique behind a loom by any means, but it taught me vision, And in the course of all these art history classes that I took, my training is as a classical artist. I had a really fantastic undergraduate degree in the arts, and that, and somehow in my undergraduate school, someone convinced me I was an artist. And I believed him, I always say, whoever that was, thank you. Because I bought it hook, line, and sinker. And that has fueled me to this day. And it's given me courage to try things.
Well,
And
that leads me to another question I have for you. And I don't mean to insult, because I know some people get insulted by this, but on the spectrum of artist versus hobbyist versus craftsman, where do you see yourself? Was it a journey, or you always knew where you were in there?
okay, that's sort of, you are getting called like crazy.
I know, I'm sorry, I can't turn it
You know,
off.
it's a little of both. I always saw I saw myself as this artist who just fumbled into the weaving world. You know, in the back door. I slid in the back door. I joined the Lincoln Weavers Guild, and I learned to weave. And God bless the everyone in the guild who took me under their arm and said, "Okay, honey, try this, take this class, do this, do this." And I was not a craftsman initially.
Uh-huh.
And you can't, and this is a field where it's both are required. And so I had the artistic vision, but I didn't have the skills of a craftsman. And it took me years to develop those skills. And I'm still learning them, actually. But I feel that how I would describe myself is I always say I'm an artist who weaves, if that
Oh, really?
defines it. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And there's always the controversy about art versus craft in terms of textiles. Is it an art? Is it a craft? And when I do commissions and sell my work, I sell it as art, as fine art.
Good for you.
Yeah. Why not, right?
Well, I was in a program that, craft was a dirty word. And
Yeah.
so you weren't allowed to even think in terms of, what a craft could be as compared to art. So I was just curious what your experience, especially the schools you went to. There were incredible schools. So I was curious about that. Well, what about process versus product? How do you view your work in that?
Well, I think for everyone who's watching this today, if you own a loom or if you do any of the textile techniques, you're a mistress or a master of process. You have to be, and you have to love it. You have to have major peace with it in some capacity in order to even warp a loom, for instance.
Uh-huh.
It is one series of tasks after another. And when I sit down to do, right now, for those of you who aren't familiar with my work, predominantly in the last 10 years, I've been doing very large scale installations for public buildings.
Mhm.
Sometimes pieces are 20 feet long, 25 feet long. They're pretty massive, and they're sold as tapestries.
Why don't we look at one of those? I don't mean to interrupt.
Yeah,
but
go
let's
ahead.
look
Yeah.
at one of those.
Let's pull something up here.
Like the Susan Buffett, is that one of them?
Yeah.
Okay, keep going. I'm sorry.
Okay. And when where I do all this drawing and planning, and I think this is a large scale tapestry that is part of a group for the Buffett Cancer Center here in Omaha, Nebraska. And these are called the Healing and Hope Tapestries. And I believe this is the Healing Tapestry. This is the Hope Tapestry. And they have the words for healing and hope in 15 different global languages. And they're all rendered in Ikat. They're all the imagery is dyed into the fiber. And as you weave it, it falls into place. Yeah, these are examples of other pieces of my work. A quick review of it.
Now, is this Warp Ikat or Weft Ikat?
It is. I do Weft Ikat, and for tapestry work, it's all Weft Ikat.
Okay.
And that so the trick with Weft Ikat is you want your imagery to become what you want it to be, and you want your selvages to be perfectly clean and crisp, and not have all kinds of baggage hanging off the edges of it. So there's a lot of math involved with what I do. But there's a tremendous amount of, there's a lot of math, a lot of planning, and a lot of great satisfaction when it does work out. A little story about these Healing and Hope tapestries. When this was an international call for artists for this lobby commission. And when I was thrilled, of course, when I got the commission. And when the Cancer Center opened, they had a series of galas. And we were at one of the galas one night, and we were sitting at a table of cancer researchers from China. And they were asking me if I was a doctor. And I said, no, I'm an artist. And I did the tapestries on the wall. And one of the doctors got up and looked across the room, and he saw the words healing and hope in Chinese on the tapestry and jumped up. Tears sprang out of his eyes. And he went, healing and hope. And my husband and I looked at each other, and we gave each other this big high five, because it could have said like chimpanzee and giraffe, I mean, I wove it, and it was done in Weft Ikat. So, it could have easily been mutated into some other language. So I was thrilled that he recognized the words healing and hope, which was the whole idea. Yeah.
That's wonderful. I love those tapestries. A couple of people are curious about some things, and so am I. When you talk about getting these commissions, how do you get started in doing commissions? How does that happen? Can you get your name out there? Or?
You do. There are several now really popular websites. One is Cafe, and they list every opportunity imaginable, in the arts, and you literally start applying to things like this. I think most states have a state arts council that offers 1% for the arts grant projects. In our state of Nebraska, anytime a public building goes up with state money, 1% of the budget has to be allocated for the arts. And so they put a call out for art to fill the building. And all these things are competitive, and they all take a tremendous amount of time, to submit a proposal and to submit your cover letter and all of the background stuff. And for years I did this and got, nothing happened. This is the story of starting out. You jump through all the hoops and nothing happens. And then, I think one day I got a phone call, and that was the difference maker. And then once you sort of get in the loop, it becomes easier to, you have something, you have a product that you can show. Yes, I did do a large building, and this is what it looked like. You don't have to just convince people that maybe you could do a large building.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And also it sounds like you have to do the work. You have to go after the commission.
Yeah. You have to go. And I think these days I co-teach a class called Artist Inc. here in Omaha, Nebraska for emerging artists. And I co-teach it with 3 other artists, and it's about the business of the arts. And it's an 8-week class. And we just talk about, you have to go after it. If you want to sell your work, there's not a magic formula. I think if there is a magic formula, it is go after it, get organized, do your homework, be self-disciplined, and jump through the hoops that you have to jump through. And I think also these days we're looking at a completely different world than we were a year ago. We'll see after COVID, we'll see what kind of funding there are for the arts, for public,
right.
And we will, I don't know, none of us know how it's going to go in our field, really. But I think many more people are making as a result of this last year pandemic.
Well, you brought up a magic word, and I've heard you talk about this other places. So I really want you to talk about it here, is that you are a big proponent of discipline. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I am, because I started out terribly undisciplined. It was truly, and people ask me, like, how do you make all this stuff? How do you do it? And it is because I've learned, and it has been learned. It didn't come naturally, it didn't come easily, but I learned to become very self-disciplined in terms of showing up for work every day. As I said, there's nothing more repelling than an unwarped loom. So the loom is always warped, right?
Right.
And when the loom is warped, you sit down behind it. And when you have deadlines, it's the fear of God that keeps you weaving, that you must meet this deadline. And all of these activities, of course, they bring you great personal satisfaction and
Mhm.
joy. But I believe good work habits, they are the basis of success in the arts. You can't just show up behind the easel and the canvas once in a while if you're going to be the next Donald Judd or the next Mark Rothko. You pretty much have to be there every day, just sweating it out, whacking it out, making mistakes, trying this, trying that. And that's been the story of my work as well.
Well, this kind of goes back to the hobbyist versus the craftsman versus the artist. What did you find worked for you when you got to that place of self-doubt, of I don't know what I'm trying to do, or maybe you never had that, of how do I keep pushing myself, and rather than I can't do this.
Yeah,
Do you
sure.
ever have that? Or?
Yeah. I think what I haven't had discouragement with the vision of, oh, I'll never be an artist. That wasn't it.
Okay.
But it was discouragement with this piece. It's a nightmare. Like, why did I think this was a good idea? How will I ever weave my way out of this mess? I've had those where it was just bad decisions. It was bad design. And those are the things, but I always say that all of the mistakes you make are such fabulous teachers, because they shape you into being the non-mistake. You're like, oh, I'll never do that again. Okay, I know this color and this color are deadly together. Okay, got that. I got that memo. Won't do that again. Won't do this again. Won't do this again. And then you do it again and go, okay, I really won't do it again next time. But I think for me, I have a really strong drive to visually create pieces that somehow make a difference. And I don't mean to sound ostentatious or arrogant when I say this, but it's my heartfelt desire that I make pieces that literally you can walk into or fall into, or that when you see them, that somehow they have an impact on your personal frequency. And I feel that that's what art does. That's what powerful art does. That's what music does. You go to a symphony, the first note that the orchestra plays, all of a sudden the worries of the day just fall off your shoulders, and you're in another world. And I think that's the role of the arts. It's to transport us to another world. And if I can do that,
I have to ask this.
Yeah.
And if you've told it too many times, I'm sorry, but I want you to tell this story about, I think it was Peru, and the man you met. Can you tell that story?
Yeah, I can tell the story. And I got to say my apologies to those of you who've heard it 1,000 times. Here it is again.
1001.
But it's an impactful story and a true story. My husband and I we did a year working on a kind of a Peace Corps project in South America. And we did some backpacking in Peru for actually 3 months before we went to work. Who has 3 months to go backpacking? Ask me this. I don't know, but this is a long time ago. And we were in Peru visiting a ruin called Saskiwaman, and a young man approached my husband. They started talking. I zipped over to see what they were talking about, and the fellow turned to me and he said, "Are you the weaver?" And I thought Kirby had told him I was a weaver, and I said, "Well, yeah, I'm the weaver." And he said, "Well, last night I had a dream, or a vision, as he called it, and I was told to come to this ruin and I would meet an American weaver. And are you the weaver?" And I just said, "Well, yeah, I'm an American weaver. Yes." And I thought this was a scam. And so the guy just intently grabbed my shoulders, looked me in the eyes, and he said, "Sit down." And he said, "The reason I'm here today is that in the dream I was told it was time to pass on all the symbols that my family has used in their work over the centuries since the time of the Inca." And he said, "I don't know if you know this or not." He's speaking in Spanish. He said, "But symbols have a shelf life." And he said, "My particular family feels that we've woven the power out of our symbols, and that we have a personal responsibility to pass these on to somebody else. He said, "Are you the weaver?" And I was like, "Yes, sir, I'm the weaver." And so he picked up a stick and started drawing in the sand with a stick. And the first symbol he drew was the Inca cross. And I will never forget it. I mean, he drew this cross and I just got body chills. I mean, my heart stopped. And he proceeded to tell the story of what the Inca cross meant to the Peruvian culture. And then he went through, we spent the entire afternoon. He was drawing. I didn't have a cell phone. I mean, these were the days of, days of yore when we didn't have anything. I was furiously sketching in my sketchbook and making notes as he told these wonderful stories. And at the end of the day, he stood up, turned to me, and he said, "Okay, they're yours." He said, "Now take these symbols and weave them into the future." And I remember those words exactly. I understood exactly in Spanish what he said. Weave them into the future. And he shook my hand, turned, walked into the forest. The sun was setting, violins were playing, parakeets were flying out of the forest. And it was over. And Kirby looked at me and he said, "Mary," he said, "how do you weave a symbol into the future?" And I said, "I have no clue." And I guess the rest of the story is I've been spending the rest of my weaving life trying to uphold that, to figure out how do you weave a symbol into the future. So in the course of all my years of weaving, all of my bodies of work are grouped into symbolically grouped. So the circle, the triangle, the cross, and I weave many variations. I mean, just trying to find a way to evolve these classic symbols that we've always had on the planet. And what I will say from that episode, whether I've been successful or not remains to be seen, but I felt that day was a great gift because it gave me my marching orders and it gave me permission. I felt like I was like, yeah, I'm going for this. I got my assignment this lifetime. I'm weaving symbols into the future by hell or high water. And that's pretty much kept me going. And to this day, it still does.
Well, somebody just said this is the first time they've heard that story. So see,
not everybody
heard it.
But it was a gift. That experience was a gift, and it could have been the Virgin Mary, right? But it was the little Peruvian guy that appeared to me. So.
All right, I have a couple of questions, and then I definitely want to talk about your book. And this is my own curiosity because I was an art major also, and I know the big thing when you talk about the Renaissance were the studio assistants. And I'm curious, can you talk some about, because you have studio assistants, right?
Yeah.
How do you work with them? How do you think that impacts on your work?
Oh gosh, I've had a studio assistant at least for the last 20 to 25 years. And it was that long ago that I realized that these two hands couldn't do it all. And that I needed help in my studio. So it started out like all things, very timidly. Someone from the guild would come over a couple hours a week. And then, or my next door neighbor, how many times did I have a next door neighbor who worked with me who knew nothing about weaving? And then, things kind of picked up the pace a bit. And I started having art students that would come and work for me. And it's been a hugely important part of my practice because we do big projects now, and it's far beyond 4 sets of hands. Sometimes there's 8 sets of hands, that are working on things.
Really?
My assistants, most of them come from an art background now. I usually, if somebody is leaving me, I just lost a wonderful assistant named Sarah Kolar. She had been my dyer for a couple of years. She moved to Northern Michigan. And so I put the word out in the arts community that I'm looking for a new helper. And does anyone have someone young who wants to be trained, really? Mm-hmm. Because they learn all my systems from scratch. It usually takes me about a year to train somebody to do whatever set of jobs they do. Nobody does everything. I'm the only one who does everything. But right now I have two assistants. And because of COVID this last year, things really, really slowed down tremendously. You know, I wasn't on the road teaching, I wasn't on the road lecturing. The commission calendar really slowed down. So we're in a different phase. But I find that the input from my assistants to be very, very important. It helps keeps the energy high. If there's a small, you know, if there's a couple of us, they're young, so we, you know, they're a great influence on me in terms of music and podcasts, you know, and just being able to dip into their world, and they as well dip into my world, and they all become friends over the years. And usually people stay a darn long time. You know, 5 years, 7 years. My current assistant has been with me almost 10 years.
I think that says something about you.
That's a long time.
They want to stay with you.
Yeah. You know, and these are good relationships, and it would be awful if it was a bad one.
Yeah.
You know? Right.
Well, I talked about teaching. I do want to talk some about your teaching. You said something the other day when we were practicing that I loved, and it goes along also with the idea of your new book.
My book.
We're going to talk some about this. But also you said, I probably am saying it completely wrong, but bear with me. You said you didn't want to write a book to teach people to make what you make, but you wanted to teach people to make their own work. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, yeah.
I love that. That gave me goosebumps.
Yeah. Well, Ikat is a, you know, it's a technique. And I stumbled onto it years and years ago because I was trying to find a way to make my work more painterly and less loom controlled and gridlocked. I started out as a carpet weaver, and I wanted it to look more painterly. And so I did some, you know, investigation on Ikat, and nothing was written, nothing. And it was through trial and error over the years that I developed this language in Ikat, this language of image making. And I feel that it's such a fabulous technique. And now Ikat is a household word. I mean, everyone, if you go to make drapes, you can go buy Ikat fabric at Joann Fabric, you know. I mean, it's not this mysterious occultish sort of thing, but it's very labor intensive to learn how to do it. And so when Interweave Press approached me and asked me if I would write a book on Ikat, I said, yes. And they said, we want it to be on warp Ikat, because most weavers do warp face weaving, you know, do wearables. And I said, absolutely. And that's the way most of the Ikat of the world is presented. And so it was a really fun project for me to all of a sudden go from Weft Ikat to making beautiful warp Ikat scarves and stoles and table runners. And I thought that the book, it's a template to teach you how to master a technique that you can then apply to whatever kind of weaving you do. You know, that was the goal of the book, to make this as user-friendly as possible for people, and not to just make stuff that replicates what I do. I mean, you know, weave what you weave, and put a new feather in your cap. I've got this new technique, and I'm going to try it doing, double weave, or I'm going to try it with this, or I'm going to try it with that. And
well, I think a lot of people do know about Ikat, but if we can show the picture of warping the yarn, that will give people a better understanding.
Yeah, and I think I sent you we've got a couple pictures of process.
Yeah, I think Liz.
Yeah, I had my web guy send some. Yeah, this is the latest Ikat back there that I just did.
There we go.
Here we are. I'm unwrapping yarn that has been wrapped on that piece.
And say what that wrapping is. A lot of people may know.
Yeah, what Ikat is, it's a resist dye technique, and it's like tie dyeing, but you tie dye the yarn. You wrap the yarn with this is a tape. You dye it, you unwrap it, and obviously everywhere that's taped does not take the dye. And then when you weave this, you get all kinds of, really lovely bleedings and runnings and sort of watercolorish effects. And it's the kind of thing where, with great mastery, you can do very precise things like writing text, in pieces, or you can do wonderful illusion-y, dreamy looking dreamscape sort of things. Because I'm mad for it. And I guess
Lucky for us.
it's mad for me too, and it's incredible. It is labor intensive. There's no doubt about it. Yeah. But
can we see a picture of your book? Let's show that. There we go.
Right. And the book came out in September. I started the books. Well, that's a whole nother story, but the book came out in September, and I'm thrilled to have written a book, and I want to write another, actually. I would love to do a series of books on Ikat and to go into different aspects of the technique more so. But it's available on Amazon, of course. It's available. It was published by Penguin Random House. You can get it directly from Penguin, or you can go to my website and you can order the book from me for a signed copy of it.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Well, I was looking through it and I saw that Catherine Ellis and Deanna Deeds were part of this. How did you, not just here, but how do you work with other artists? How did you work together on the book? And do you find you work with other artists in your work?
Okay. I love to work with other artists, and I don't often get to collaborate with this. And what Catherine was the technical editor. Interweave came to me when I was writing the book, and they said, okay, somebody has to technically edit this book and go over all this stuff to make sure it's accurate and right. And they said, we don't know anyone who knows Ikat better than you do. Who can we call? And I said, Catherine.
Who's going to edit the master?
Catherine, the master dyer herself. And Catherine and I have worked together. I taught at Penland School of Craft.
Oh, okay.
A 2 months class there several years ago. Catherine came for a week as a guest artist. Over the years, we've become friends, and she is a master. She's a master weaver, a master dyer, and I have nothing but the utmost respect for Catherine Ellis. I adore her as a person. We spent 2 weeks in the bus going through the deserts of China together, and she's a remarkable woman and one of the brilliant jewels of our field. So I was thrilled when Catherine agreed to be the technical editor. So you can bet that there's not one error technically in this book because Catherine had her hand on it. Yeah, very great help. When I do I collaborate often? No. Would I like to more? Absolutely, yes. And I think one of the things I am asked to come in and advise younger, like college students on projects, class projects and things like that. And I've done some public art projects where I've asked college classes to come and assist me. And I did a public art project in Omaha, and it had gotten damaged and it needed to be refurbished. It was a pretty big project. And so in the course of 2 years, I had 2 different college classes come in and help me redo this public art project. And that was incredibly satisfying to have other people's hands involved and other people's insights, and particularly young artists who are emerging, who would never approach a public arts project. They would never have been asked. Mm-hmm. So anytime that I can pull somebody in, it's exciting for both of us, or all of us, whoever's involved. Yeah.
Well, somebody was asking about your traveling because a lot of the Ikat is Asian, part of the world, India. Have you been able to travel there? Have you studied over there?
Prior to COVID, yes. Last year I was supposed to be in Asia twice on Ikat trips, and they were both canceled. I've done it. I've been blessed with doing a lot of travel that was textile related, and I always am incredibly moved and inspired when I do, because for us, I mean, what we do is rather luxurious, that we have these hobbies or these careers as craftspeople and weavers. And in many parts of the world, this is not a luxury. Weaving is their lifeline. This is the one thing they can do that they can sell, that they can feed their family, educate their children. And I particularly remember I was on a trip to Indonesia, and we were visiting villages, and we were going through a village at dusk, and it was right after supper, and all the women it was an Ikat village. All the women in the village were outside their little huts, and they had their Ikat boards propped up, and they were wrapping Ikat. Like everybody in town was wrapping Ikat because they were making clothing that they were going to sell. And it was pretty powerful for me to see that, to be part of, that we spoke the same language, that we lived in different parts of the world, and maybe we're dreaming the same dreams. I don't know, but I can't really quite put words to it, but I feel such a kinship with the weavers of the world, and boy, know that I've been blessed. As I will say that, know that I've been blessed. Yeah.
Well, someone else has asked this, and I'm curious about this too. How do you go from concept to actual weaving? Do you do a cartoon? Do you do several drawings?
Yeah.
Do you go on to a software and design it on there?
No, I'll tell you exactly how I do it. Like, for instance, I'll get a phone call. Somebody, I just got one. A new bank is being built, and they want a huge long horizontal piece for the
Yay!
The bank.
Good for you.
So it's like, fantastic, wonderful. What do you want? They don't know. They just want it to be wonderful, okay? And they want it to be woven, and they want me to weave it, okay?
Easy.
So you kind of dig around for what's the theme? Do we want landscape? Where you have to like drive the ship on things like this. And I start off with all kinds of drawings. And I draw, but I also I do a lot of cut and paste, because my work isn't figurative. It doesn't look like it's big color blocks, and it's very non-objective. So I have to, anytime I submit a proposal to somebody, the proposal has to look like the work is going to look. So I have a kind of a series of cut and pasting things that I do. I give people lots of examples of work. We look at my website. And
now, when you say
to drive the ship to where they want it to go. What?
I'm sorry to interrupt, but let me clarify. When you say you have these examples, are these woven examples? Are these drawn out
it's all
colored paper? Okay.
They're all kind of collaged on paper. And maybe I'll give somebody 10 examples of something, and they'll go, no. Oh, I kind of like that one. And then we go back to the drawing board again. And how do I build off that? Oh, I kind of like that one.
Mm-hmm.
And then, when they come up with an idea that they like, or when I come up with an idea that I like, then I look at it, how do I technically make it?
Mm-hmm.
And that's when you figure out, okay, how do I do this? How do I make the blue bleed into red and then become orange over in this corner? How what's the size of the piece? If it's good, if it's too big for my loom, how many sections do we weave it in? How do we put those sections together? What are the dye recipes we're going to use? There's a ton of figuring out, but I don't do the figuring out first. I try to design the dream, create the dream, and then you figure out how to make the dream. And then if I can't make the dream, then I do a little altering on the drawing. We have to make it technically work, or it's a disaster from the beginning. And then we start weaving. Then we start dyeing in my studio, warping looms, getting things rolling. The pieces begin. And once the piece begins, it just rolls along. I've spent months figuring things out, wrapping Ikat, dyeing yarns. We have all the pieces in place. It's not.
For most of us, we start out by using whatever yarns we can buy, right? When did you find that you needed to start dyeing?
The first week I sat behind a loom. I went to the yarn closet at the university, opened it up and looked in, and I said to the teacher, "You've got to be kidding me." And
so you started dyeing way back when?
Yeah. And I started dyeing the first week. It was Cushing dyes. And I knew I have to believe that I'm deep down a colorist. because I couldn't buy, I had such difficulty with the palettes that were presented to me. So
Right.
and initially when I had no money, like most young people, I had no money to do this. So I would go buy sale yarn and I would over dye it with Cushing dyes. And for years I did that. And then, then things started to evolve and change, and my dye system started to evolve and change. And I love dyeing. It's one of my favorite parts of the practice that I do. And we dye probably thousands of pounds of yarn a year. And a lot of it doesn't get used. Maybe I'll just dye all this yarn and we'll do like 20 different variations of yellow and maybe only use 4 of those. And so we just put everything else on the shelves and we kind of build a storehouse of color.
Do you see a dyeing book in your future?
Oh, Catherine can write it. Catherine Ellis. She probably has already written. She's written it already. And
yeah, if you haven't seen Catherine Ellis's book, it's complete. It is everything, comprehensive.
It's everything. Like why would I ever even rear my head, and write a dye book when Catherine has written one. So yeah.
All right, what I'm going to do is, Liz, I'm going to ask you if you'll put up the Healing and Hope the tapestries again, and I'm going to keep asking questions from the list.
And we can show some other.
This is an interesting question. Lisa wanted to know that if you could go back and start over, would you do the photography and the painting, or do you think, if you knowing what you know now, would you go straight into weaving and stay there?
Nope, I would do exactly what I would do it the way it was, because I had such powerful, formative teachers that taught me lessons that I brought to the weaving.
Okay.
That opened that they like my photography teacher. And I remember the first class I took with him, he took us into a dark room. He had 3 slide projectors going, and we sat in this dark room, and for an hour, he just shot images of contemporary photography, 3 at a time for a solid hour. And we staggered out of the room at the end. And I mean, he like pried open my brain. I didn't even know that world existed. I was like, who are these people that did this work?
Yeah.
And, and I felt that all those influences were pretty important in shaping me. Yeah. And I don't think I would have been ready, and also I think I would have been so influenced. I think I would have been a copycat weaver. I wouldn't have been so brave had I started weaving early. Yeah, I do. I think I would have been so influenced by a weaving teacher that I would have woven work just like that teacher. And I don't think I wouldn't have been as brave. I didn't know any better. I just struck out on my own and didn't know I don't know, didn't know much of anything, and then just figured it out. And I think that was a good path for me.
Several people are asking, what do you weave on? What kind of a loom do you, or
looms? That's really good. Yeah. I weave on Cranbrook looms. I have 2 Cranbrooks. I have a 12-foot Cranbrook and I have a 10-foot Cranbrook. Okay. I weave on 4 harnesses. I have a very set template. For the kind of work that I do. And it hasn't varied in 30 years. I have I weave the same structure. And what I'm doing is I'm creating a canvas. I'm creating a very firm, solid canvas that will last hopefully centuries. And then the fibers that I weave into it, that's the painting that fills between the warp threads. I use a linen warp, and I dye wools and silks and fill it all in and try to tell stories that way.
Do you have a favorite go-to fiber? I don't know if you talked about that or not.
Yeah, I have forever used Henry's Attic 3-ply Crown Colony wool. I buy it, by the ton. Not by the ton, but I buy a lot of it, and I've used it for years and years and years. And why do I like this? I like the weight of it. I use it 2-ply. It dyes fabulously, and it's incredibly forgiving. And I mean forgiving, that meaning that when you leave a dye pot on too long and it boils for like an hour, your yarn hasn't felted or shrunk. You know, it's a pretty resilient yarn, and it really holds color. And it's I find my pieces to be very light fast. For many years, I was an acid dyer. I used Pro Wash Fast acid dyes strictly, and now I'm branching more into natural dyes. I'm doing a lot of work with indigo, which I love, love, love.
Okay.
Yeah.
Liz, can you go on to the next? If this is healing, then the other one. There we go. Now that's
Okay,
the.
This is the big installation at the University of Nebraska in Omaha. It's a 55-foot long wall, and they wanted a textile, and they wanted it, you know, fast and quick. And I was like, wow, holy cow, what do I do? And so I did six. These are 6 individual pieces, and then we painted the wall in the background to kind of make it all look unified. It's called the Red Tapestry Wall, and you know, I'm happy with it. I'm happy with the piece. I think a true test of a piece is, this was done a few years ago, that every time I go back and revisit it, I walk in and I go, oh yeah, I like that. Rather than, you know, cringing and wanting to go like this and slide across the room, hoping no one recognizes me. So I feel very strongly about the piece. This is the one this is just off the loom, right before Christmas. And this is called, what is it called? Sandhill Crane, I think Sandhill Crane, something week number 7, Sandhill Crane Watch week number 7. And this is a deceptive piece. It's 22 feet long. Doesn't look like it there. And it's only 38 inches high. And this is an Ikat. And this is a panoramic view of the Sandhill cranes on the Platte River during the crane migration season. And it was a pretty awesome endeavor, particularly for my studio assistants, of all this Ikat wrapping. And I had 2 assistants that wrapped yarn on this piece the first 4 months of COVID. So it was March, April, May, and June. Both of them worked constantly to do all of this wrapping. And then we dyed the piece in indigo, and then it was woven. And I have 3 panels of it that we prepped. And the next piece I'm going to do is I'm going to do a Rorschach of this piece flipping out onto itself. So it would even be much, much wider. And I don't have a home for this piece yet, but I hope I find one. But this was an idea that I had always wanted to do. I'd always wanted to do a landscape panorama of the Sandhill cranes on the Platte in Nebraska. This particular piece was done about a year ago, and this is Susie Buffett, Warren Buffett's daughter, commissioned me to do this particular piece for the lobby of their foundation building. And again, it's a quite large piece. They're called the Pink and Yellow Tapestries, and I'm pretty crazy about them. I was really happy with how they came out. And this was kind of a fun thing. We were talking about designing pieces and, you know, doing all this prep work for a client. And the day that I was supposed to meet with Susie and show her ideas for the piece, her art dealer from New York City was in town. And she said, oh, do you mind if he comes to our meeting? And I was like, oh my God, it's either going to go really well.
If he must.
It's going to go really bad. I don't know which way it's going to go. So we sit down in the meeting. I put all this stuff on the table, and he looks at everything. And I thought, he's holding my life in the palm of his hand. And he looked at it. He said, this piece and this piece, bigger than you've ever woven before. I want you to fill up the wall. And I was like, whoa. We passed the test because I didn't know how he was going to respond to gigantic weavings in their lobby. This is a piece for another building in Omaha for the Women's Center for Advancement, a women's abuse shelter, actually. And they commissioned this for their lobby. And this is 2 panels. Both panels are done in Weft Ikat. And the left panel contains the words for woman in quite a few languages, world languages. And they were very happy with the piece, and I am too. And their logo is 4 circles, so hence we have these kind of half, you know, the illusion of circles on the right. Yeah.
A lot of people were asking about your the symbols that you had talked about that you got from the man in Peru. And several people want to know, can you somehow share those with the world? What were those symbols? Or is there a place that people could see what those symbols are?
You know, I've been asked over the years, because because it is a pretty pivotal life story for me. I've shared it many times in keynotes and in talks that I've given. And people have said, why don't you do a pamphlet or something like that? And I'm going to. Because I have all this in a sketchbook, and I've often thought I probably need to reproduce it kind of as it was in the sketchbook and kind of tell the story and have, you know, create some kind of a little folio about it at some point.
You'll have to come back and share it with us.
Okay.
We want to be first in line. Come back.
Yeah.
Somebody else was asking about that. She said that she has, if one doesn't have a degree in fine arts and starts out as a craft person, how do you convince others that you are an artist?
You know, by convincing yourself first.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Because if you own it, they own it too. They know it. They can taste it when you walk into a room. You know, it is that. And being an artist doesn't mean you went to art school. You know, that's not a criteria by any means whatsoever. It's being deeply directed and fed by what you create. Like, yeah. And seeing that it's purposeful on this planet. And I believe now, I mean, this has always been the case. We know how purposeful the arts have been in shaping humanity and civilization. My God Almighty, where would we be without them? And we are at one of those very pivotal times right now. Whether we know it or not, I truly believe that there's opportunity with a capital O. That's because the world is changing, whether you like it or not, whether you believe it or not, it's a happening. And we all, you know, we're all along for the ride. So why shouldn't we contribute to the beauty of the ride and the beauty of the experience? And now more than ever, perhaps all of these universities that closed down so many of these craft programs in the arts, there's going to be a call for them again. You know, we got to rebuild a world here, and we have to rebuild skill sets because they're critical for they're critical for the understanding of who we are as a humanity. These skill sets, this work with our hands, this work with our minds, you know, the combination of both, the vision that we create. It's all a beautiful process. And, you know, all of you who are listening, you're part of that world. You know, we all drew the card in one way or another. We drew the card and we were attracted to this world. And it's our vocabulary and it's what we have in common. And it's thrilling. It pretty much excites me every day, except for the days that it doesn't.
Somebody was asking about Ikat Weft versus warp Ikat. Two things. What is?
Yeah.
How did you?
Two different worlds. It's two different worlds.
Well, somebody was asking why you chose one over the other.
Well, because Interweave really wanted me to do a book on warp Ikat because it was the most transferable for the reader.
But you do Weft, right?
But I do Weft. Yeah.
How did you choose Weft?
Because I was a carpet weaver, you know. Because I did weft fit. I've always done my MO was weft faced work. And so how do you make weft faced work look painterly? And, you know, I stumbled onto this. The first piece I did, I was weaving a carpet and I was doing a little stripe. And I was like, you know, yeah, I can make it red. I can make it blue. I can do checkerboards, you know, on it. come on, there must be something else. And so I took a board and I put a nail at one end, a nail at the other. I stretched my yarn. I cut up a little garbage bag and I did some little wraps. I dyed it. And this is a true story. I had a pot of like spaghetti sauce on one burner, pot of dye on the other. And I was stirring away blindly and, foolishly stirring away. And that, I changed those habits rather quickly. Took the yarn out, unwrapped it, went to weave it in, then my little stripe, and realized that it didn't fit, So right away I learned that there was some math involved. The yarn was going to shrink when you dyed it, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so my first little stripe that I wove had 6 Ikat ties on it, and they all kind of shimmered and slid, and it was, it really made the piece pop. Like, how could one stripe make such a difference? And that was all it took. Then the next piece had 3 stripes. So we did 18 wraps. and now we do hundreds of thousands in my studio. That's why I have helpers. We wrap yarn till the cows come home. And just kind of try to dream it and create it. And what if we did this? What if we did this? Let's try this. Oh, let's try text. Let's try that. And it's the trying of the new things that expands you. And that's, being expanded is just, there's nothing like it, really.
Well, I have a message here from Cameron Taylor Brown. She said, I need to ask you to loop back and ask about Deanna's involvement in the book. I didn't ask you that.
I don't know that she was involved in the book. Well, I have to be really careful when I say this, but I don't believe she was a contributor. She was not a contributor.
Okay.
So I'm drawing a blank, and it could be just like, I'm drawing a blank on this. So
that's okay.
Forgive me if I forgive me, Deanna, but I'm drawing a blank.
That's fine.
Okay.
Somebody else, I love this because I call this the Squirrel Syndrome. She said that she wants to do this and she wants to do that. And she likes tapestry, she likes floor loom. She says, how do you focus? How do you settle on one thing and pursue it?
You just do. And, and also I think when I was learning to weave, to learn to weave, you try all these things naturally. You're discovering who you are. You're trying to find your voice. You're trying to find where's my sweet spot in all of this. And I think I found my sweet spot with carpets, as a rug weaver. And then when I found it, I was like, okay, I want to make a lot of these and I want to get really good at it. And the only way that's going to be happening is if I don't sign up for Shadow Weave 101 here. If I stay home and just keep weaving carpets. And so I kind of picked my area and then dove into it. And then the carpets gradually became tapestries over time. And that's, and there are many people who are eloquent and fluid, beautiful weavers that do all kinds of things. And that's just not, that isn't me. I was told this to Kathy the other day when we were online together. I'm not a weaver's weaver. Catherine Ellis is, that is so articulate with so many techniques. I have my templates and I have the road that I walk, and the road that I walk, I've walked it well. It's a pretty well traversed road, but I don't deviate very often from it. And that's just what's worked for me.
Okay. Somebody was asking about the tape that you use.
Oh yeah, the Ikat tape.
Can you reuse that?
You can, but it splits.
Yeah.
And there's one supplier in North America, Maiwa in Vancouver, BC. And I buy a box of like 25 rolls every couple of years. And the shipping costs as much as the tape.
What wasabi tape or something like that?
It's just Ikat tape. And I remember I called Maiwa because I was out and they were like, oh, we're waiting for a shipment. They're always waiting for a boat or a crate from Japan with tape. And they said, but hey, everybody here in the office ties up their tomatoes. They stake their tomatoes with it. We'll see if people can bring in their extra rolls. And so everybody brought in their tomato staking rolls of Ikat tape and they sent them to me. And we use that. So it's over the years, we've tried lots of different, you can wrap Ikat with many other things, but you just want it to be dye resistant. So like in a really fine area, you could use dental floss. It has like a wax dental floss that would make a really small resist. I've been in Uzbekistan where they use Scotch tape. They have big rolls of Scotch tape and they wrap their Ikat with that. In India, they often use the rubber tires, the inner tube on bicycle tires, and they'll take a big area and put the inner tube on it, and then they'll just bind it with some rope. I mean, there's all kinds of things you can use, but we do so much of it that I use the tape.
Oh, somebody wants to know what is behind you.
Oh,
yeah, tapestry behind you.
Yeah, it's an Indonesian Ikat actually there, and I'm in our guest cabin on our property. And I've got a wood stove in back of me that's loaded up because it's a cold, wintry day in Nebraska. And we've had this Ikat forever. And it's, I like it. But we were saying yesterday, it looks like I have a Ikat stovepipe hat on or something.
Yeah. It's like a crown.
Yeah, or something, some sort of, or a hut. Yeah, I don't know what it is, but.
Somebody said when you made the choice to work from a studio instead of your home, how did you decide that? And did you start with a small studio or?
That's a really good question. Really big deal too. Forever I worked at home. I worked in the basement. I've worked in basements of every house we've ever lived in. And we always picked the house based on the basement, that it would have a walkout basement so I could walk outdoors so I could walk out and that I could dye and hang things outside. And I always, I've outgrown the spaces. And so here in Omaha, probably about 7 years ago, I ran 2 studios. We kept the dye studio in my basement. All the wet work happened there. And then I moved into an architecture firm where I leased a space in something called the CoLab. And that's where all the weaving was done there. And that was a great move for me because it was a lovely space to meet clients. And rather than having them come into my house per se. So that worked out well. And also, I think also clients really, really responded to the fact that I was now working out of an architecture firm. There was some sort of consumer confidence that was inspired there by that. And right now we have 150 acres on the Platte River. We're building our retirement, quote unquote, retirement house. Not that I will ever retire, and a new studio. And I think I will be in the studio by March of this year. So that's pretty exciting.
It is exciting.
Yeah. And we'll see where it goes.
We have so many more questions, but a lot of these questions I think would be answered in your book. There's some technical questions, and I do want to encourage people to get the book. Somebody was asking about some of the equipment and a lot of that's explained in her book. Some people were asking about if they could get a card to put in the books because I've already bought the book. I'm assuming you would be willing to do that.
You contact me through my website or mzicafoose@gmail.com, and I would be happy to write anything you want me to write. I'll write it to you.
Well, I cannot thank you enough for being here today. It's just been so enjoyable. We do appreciate you coming.
Well, I thank you. It's an honor to be asked. I love to talk about my work. I think no matter, I don't know, I always feel like I'm working in a vacuum because so much of it is alone, even though you have studio assistants. You know, we work all year, and maybe there'll be a show, you know, an opening one night, something, but you know, there's not, and particularly this year of COVID, there's been so little exposure, and a very odd year to release a book when you cannot go out and do book signings and travel and things like that. So that was a sad moment for me with the book, but we produced a film in conjunction with the book that if viewers would like to look at that. It's a film about me and my work, and it's just maryzicafoose.com/film. And
so that's on your website, right?
That's on my website, and that's at further information about my work.
And I believe that's in the notes.
Good, great.
That it's maryzicafoose.com. So I wanted to make sure we said that. And you can get the book there, or
you can get the book there. Also, I do Zoom programs for guilds, and some, you know, starting really now to do some Zoom teaching. Now that we've actually got this move under our belt, I can. That was the big thing this year. It's like I had to get us moved, and we're here now. So now I'm developing some workshops that I can do virtually, and hopefully we will not be doing these much longer. You know,
I know. I'll be glad to see people. Be glad to see you.
Yeah,
I
can't wait to see all of you again. I can't wait to come to Convergence, you know, and see a auditorium full of people.
Yes, we hope we'll see you at Convergence.
Yeah.
So again, thank you, Mary. Thank you, everybody who came today. Happy tea. We appreciate you coming. This was recorded and is on Facebook. So a lot of people are watching it on Facebook as well as through Zoom. Eventually it'll be on YouTube. That'll be down the road, but you can go to Facebook Live and watch it on our Facebook page. And if you want to watch it again, or if you missed something, or you want to tell someone about it. Again, I want to thank you. This program and a lot of the programming for HGA comes through the generous contributions of the Fiber Trust. So if you want more programming like this, or you just want to support HGA, please go to the website weavespindye.org if you would like to donate to Fiber Trust. And also think about the benefits of membership. We would love to have you join. You can also do that on weavespindye.org. Next week, on January 12th, we will have tea with Peggy Wiedemann. She's an award-winning basket artist. That session is also sponsored by the bead artist Laurel Schwartz. If you would be interested in sponsoring one of our textiles and tea sessions, please contact HGA, and we would love to have your sponsorship. So thank you all so much again. Thank you, Mary. We appreciate it. Happy tea to everyone, and may you have beautiful textiles. Good afternoon, and see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.